No, I need to quit being a panelist so that I can win one time.
We removed you from the what do they call the bingo balls, the lottery balls.
Yeah.
We removed your number from that. So sorry, Amy, you're off.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I said. I need to not be a panelist.
or we need to start
I need to
coming
be
up
a
with
guest.
some perks, some panelist perks. That's what we need.
So, okay, well, hey, it's time. It's 12 o'clock straight up, or a little bit after. So we're going to get things underway. And so, Trevor, you want to kick us off, partner?
Hey, thanks so much, everyone, for coming. Certainly appreciate, of course, massive thank you to our panelists. Jason Ledlow, HGA Fundraising, HGA Bid, Trevor Nelson, HGA Fundraising, HGA Bid. Thanks for tuning in to the 24th episode of the HGA free webinar series. So this is 24 weeks in a row. Thank goodness to our guests and also our panelists for keeping it going. So the consistency has been great, and can't thank you all for joining us. What we have today is a very, very interesting topic. We think there's going to be a ton of value, obviously, and feel free to share these recordings that we'll send out to you after the webinar. But basically, from events that are 100 people in size to 1,000 people in size, we want to show you step by step, answer a ton of questions on how to make your next fundraising event epic, memorable, something that folks, donors especially in your community, will not want to miss. And so with that, we've got two of the finest fundraisers that we know. And Amy Myers is with us, thank goodness, a friend of the webinar, a close friend of HGA's, and National Senior Director of Fundraising and Community Engagement with MDA. Has done events from that spectrum of 100 to, I mean, gosh, 10,000 if you include virtual attendance and whatnot. So beyond the wealth of knowledge. So we're so thankful that she's here. And then we have our another friend of HGA, longtime friend, George Wooden, who is a world-class fundraiser in his own rights, owner of and founder of BW Unlimited. And he's here, done the same thing, done a lot of huge in-person events. And we have a ton of experience that we want to share with regard to, once again, making your next fundraising event. These are things that you can apply to a fundraising event that you're planning for fall. Of course, huge importance that we have questions coming in because our panelists are eager to answer those. And that's where we're going to get the real gold out of this webinar. So Q&A function at the bottom, chat feature that I'll be monitoring for questions. Jason's going to, play moderator, of course, with our panelists, and I'll let you take it from there. So thanks so much, everyone, once again, for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. And before we get started, I got some really important business to get out of the way. And so I'm going to just take everybody's spotlight off except for my own. And because this is kind of an important thing, I just, I'm just telling you, it's got to happen. Sorry.
Yeah, I have an idea what this is going to be.
Got to get this deal out of the way. But
I have an idea.
Bunch of y'all, we've got, fortunately some great clients here that are tuned in, but other stuff. But I just got to show you this right here. So this is for all of y'all that have worked with Morgan on our team. This is her little boy, my grandson, my first grandson, Calvin Calloway. And so I just want to just let everybody see him. Here's another little shot of his little guy.
Oh, there he is.
And so thank you for all the well wishes from everybody. But I'm one of those guys that always said, what is the deal, with all these grandparents? And now that I am one, I get it. It's like
I'm jealous. I want you to know I'm jealous.
It is the unbelievable greatest thing ever. So
he is something. Yeah. We got a new member of our team.
I could burn an hour talking about that little guy. And he's only a week old. So he was born last Thursday after a webinar. So I'm so excited to have George and Amy here, because one of the things that we're seeing around the country, and we're so fortunate. Thank you guys so much for the clients that are here, and we get to see this around the country. But just in conversation with both Amy, George independently, things that they're doing is how, we've all seen those fundraising events. We've all seen those events where somebody it's one of those deals where everybody wants to, what's the word? It's one of those everybody wants to go to. No, it's the FOMO, fear of missing out. How do we create those events? I know some of you are out there doing it, Obviously, Amy and George are fantastic at it. And so that's why I really wanted to talk to them about it today and throw some stuff out there, get their feedback, and have little debates about what they think works and what they don't. Because we've got two really individual viewpoints. One, Amy works for a national firm, national nonprofit, working with the entire nation in that kind of organization. And George is on the flip side. He is an independent fundraiser who works with organizations and creates these as well. So, we've got an incredible experience out here to share with. And so I'm going to just jump right in and just throw it out there and I'd like to just kind of just give us just maybe top one or two things that you've seen that make that are top on your list, and we can kind of go from there, that make an event memorable, that everybody wants to go to, and just some things that really get things kicked off that our could take back to their events and help create value. So
defer to Amy first. Ladies first.
Amy, go.
All right. So a couple things. Number one, I would say it is so important to keep it very mission rich. That to me can make or break your event. You don't want it to be it's not a party. It's a fundraiser with a specific goal in mind. And part of that goal should be sharing your mission with your guests and making sure that they understand your mission, they become invested in your mission, and once they're invested in your mission, they will return. And then the other things I think are just simple things, keeping it exciting, fun. You don't want it to be a boring event. And a lot of times I think we get hung up on the program piece of it. And while the program piece of it is important, you really want the program piece to be a very small portion. We're finding nowadays people don't want to listen to 10 speakers that speak for 2 minutes each. And, we want to focus on the fundraising. We want to have some fun. We want to teach about our mission, and that'll keep them coming back. Okay,
George, tell us what you based on what Amy said, or what you see, what your experience is.
Okay, so I have a completely opposite opinion on what she says in the first thing, but because I'm used to dealing with or working with startup charities, smaller charities, mid-level, not very large charities, not everybody knows the mission of the charity, right? So one of the things that I'm always saying is you always need to gain support, always get more supporters. The people who know your mission know your mission. So my thing is this, and I mean, as you know, Jason, and we're routinely putting 800 to 1,000 people on events. So I will always tell you just in regards to this part, it's all about the hype beforehand. It's all about the hype of the event. My things, and you and I talked about this, is there's two keys to success. It's the venue and the menu. Where's that? What are you offering? What's it going to be? Where the place is? What's the attractants? Because the reality of it is we're in a very crazy competitive line of work. Everybody's competing over the same dollar. We're all trying to sell Gary V. Remember, Jason, we're all trying to sell attention. Yeah. We're trying to get people's attention. From the start, we need to bring in new supporters. We're always needing new supporters. So because everybody is asking for money, everybody's trying to fundraise, everybody's constantly, you pull into McDonald's, would you give the Ronald McDonald House? You go to Walmart, St. Jude's, everybody's always asking for money. But the one common thing is this: in order to get them to come to hear your mission, like Amy had said about being at the event, is to gain new supporters by having a great event at a great venue with a great menu. Now, menu doesn't just mean the food. It means the whole gamut. It means what they're going to get for food, drinks, the area, what's the service like going to be, what's the parking lot going to be, what are the auction items, who's going to be there. Absolutely, positively. Absolutely. That's my take. My take is opposite. Instead of being mission focused, it should be event focused, all about the event, right?
Mm-hmm.
again,
let me, I'm gonna bring this back to Amy just for a second, because I think that's really good, because she talked about mission, but then you also said something, Amy. You said not everybody wants to sit there and listen to 10 speakers for 2 minutes apiece and all this programming. They want to get to the party, to have fun, to raise money, to do those things. So what are you seeing on that as well?
Me or Amy?
No, Amy. Unmute, Amy. There you go.
So say that again. What is the actual question?
Well, just about, you said that, you talked about mission, because I'm a big mission guy. I think that, mission is really, really important. I think that keeping your mission out there in front and making sure that people know why you're there. But how do we get them there in the first place? And so George brought up the venue and the menu. So do you have anything to add to that, to get people, maybe new people into your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little opposite. I do think the venue is important, and the menu as everything that goes on. Where we have found success is really utilizing our committees. They become attached to our mission, so they become our spokespeople ahead of time to get them excited for the event. We also tend to market our events to get people there as a great networking event. It's everybody that's anybody in the market that you want to know is going to be there. And that's typically true. We have high executives and stuff like that. So we sell it as a networking event. And then as far as the mission piece, it's a combination of, we do things ahead of time. Like I said, the committee, they're the ones selling the sponsorships for us and talking about the mission. We do newsletters ahead of time for people that have, bought sponsorships, so that they can know what to expect. And there's always the mission piece. We bring a mission piece into every element, whether it's a mission speaker at our committee meeting, a mission article, an article that talks about our mission in the newsletters that we send leading up to the event. The sales piece has a mission piece to it. So we really bring the mission into each aspect of it, whether it's leading up to it, selling sponsorships at the event, or the thank you and the stewardship that we do after the event.
So what I hear you saying, Amy, is not really anything different, but you're because you're still talking about, committees, talking about the event, what's going to happen, how this is going to be exciting, but sowing that mission within that messaging. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yep.
Okay. George, you talked about getting 1,000 people there. And I know we've had this conversation about committees that goes along with what Amy says. How, when somebody comes and you say, hey, look, we're going to get 1,000 people in the room. And I know everybody, just so everybody's clear, I know that some of you don't have a venue that size. It may be 500, it may be 250. But I know a lot of clients, they're worried. They start talking about, nonprofit. If we get the tickets there, and for me, I always think, that's not even an issue. That's not a problem. It's just, we're constrained by the size of the room is the only constraint I see. So George, whenever you see that, whenever somebody brings that to you, and they're like, I'm not really sure how to go about that. Give me like top maybe 2 or 3 things. I know there's a lot, but let's just say the top 2 or 3 things that somebody watching this can take back today and immediately create an impact to start selling that tables and tickets and filling.
Okay. So you and I talked about this on a private conversation, because again, like you, I could talk about this for a long time. I want to go back and just touch base real quick on what Amy said. I agree 1,000% to make it all about the event, the momentum of the event, speakers, because, oh my God, you could put up a speaker and a speaker will talk, tell them they're going to talk for 10 minutes, they'll talk for 45. No, it's all about momentum. The event is built up on momentum. I mean, you could literally like walk out there with a hook and take them down. It kills me when that happens. And nobody wants to sit down. If you make them sit down, the momentum is gone, right? What's built. So let's go back. So you have to understand, I'm looking at this from a different standpoint. I'm looking at this from a starter or a new or a smaller charity to a mid-range charity. The keys to it is you can't be afraid. If I came to you and said, hey, I want you to sell, listen, John Smith, I want you to sell 500 tickets. You're going to look like me. You're going to be pulling your hair out. I'm going to start working on my eyebrows here real soon. That's a joke, by the way. So you're going to start pulling your hair out and go, oh my God, how can I sell 500 tickets? Well, do you know 50 people? If you know 50 people, Have 50. If you sell 50 tables of 10, you're looking at 500 people. Everybody loves to see the forest. They love to see the forest. But once they're told, in order to sell a venue with 1,000 people, it's only 100 tables of 10. Do you know 100 people? That goes back to the committee. It goes back to the team. Then, this is very important. It's teaching your team on how to sell the event, how to talk about the event, how to hype it. You know, because everybody wants to say, hey, I always do this thing because I do video blogs. In fact, I've shot one before this. Hey, you want to come to my fundraiser? No, don't do that. Nobody likes boring. Train your staff, train your team on how to talk about it, how to talk about the event, how to talk about it, how to answer the questions, to be the hype. Tell them how urgent, the urgency of buying the ticket is. Train them on how to talk about it. That's the key. It's all about hype about the event. If you're a newer charity or smaller charity, you have to bring them in, and you're going to have to bring them in with the party, or I hate saying party for these. You have to bring them for the event. I always tell my clients all the time, do not ever refer to this as a fundraiser or a banquet or this or that. It's always about the event. Event. Make it exciting. Teach them how to talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Amy, how are you going to fill a room with 1,000 people?
So I have mixed feelings about this one. And I say that sometimes I feel like, and this would be different from a startup, and it could be from a startup, but more looking at it from an existing event. I often hear people say, you know, we had 500 people. I want 800 people next year in the room, or I want 900 people. And I tell people, back up. You don't think because you're getting more people in your room that's growing your event. To me, growing your event is not about the number of people, it's about the income. So to go from 500 to 800 people is good, as long as those additional 300 people are people that are money spenders and that you are charging the right price. We want to be careful not to sell a table for 10 people at a low price, and you have 10 people that come to the event that I call eaters, not bidders.
Grazers.
Yeah, I mean, we actually took an event and we scaled back on the number of people in the room because we went through and realized we were selling the sponsorships too cheap and the tables too cheap, and there wasn't enough difference between, we like to take, so whatever our cost per person is for a table, and do 2.5 times, and that's how we get our starting price, to make sure we're making.
Just to make sure I understand clearly what you're saying. So if the cost of the table to feed everybody there is going to be $500, just for example, the least you're going to sell that for is $1,500.
If you're doing it, are you saying by table or by person?
By table,
yeah.
Or it could be 1,000,
yep.
And it's 3,000, whatever the number is.
Yep.
So if it's $1,000, what it's going to take for 10 people at a table, you're not going to sell it for less than $3,000.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that, because one of the things that I think happens is that people go in too cheap. They start thinking with the staff person starts thinking with their wallet and not with the donor wallet and what people are willing to spend and willing to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that being said, you got to have your pricing right to grow the event financially. You also have to have the right conversations to have the right people in the room, because you can get in a situation where you grew your event by people and you've increased by 300 people, but all you've done is increased your cost, and those people didn't spend money, and so you actually made less money. So I think you have to be very careful finding that right balance and truly, like, what is growing your event. To me, growing your event is your income is growing.
George, you and I had a conversation. You've got something that's right in line with what Amy's saying about the cost of admission and how that relates to people giving money. So would you share that with everybody?
The cost of admission, you say?
Yeah, the ticket price, the table price, things like that.
Okay. Again, I would love to be, working with with a charity that could do that, right? To charge 2 or 3 times. But again, this goes back down to the mid-leveled, what I always do is this is because in order for us to grow support for a charity that hasn't been around a long time, or like the one I just did in Twin Falls, we're getting people there, and we're using the ticket price as a financial hurdle. It's almost to stop the grazers. I agree with her 100% about grazers, people who come in, eat, drink, and leave. So the ticket price for me, for my clients, is a financial hurdle, because and listen, I got to be blunt about this. If you have a cheap ticket, you're going to get cheap people. So you need to make sure that these people have enough wherewithal that they can donate, they can bid, they can buy, they can do everything. And that's the loan application process. Can you pay the price to get in the door? Growing the event to the point where you can have something you could do 2 to 3 times the cost, that's incredible. I've done many events in DC and New York where the tickets were $5,000, $10,000 a ticket. We did one for Paul McCartney in the Low Boathouse, and it was $15,000 a ticket. So absolutely, positively. But when it comes down to, if you are a starter, a mid-level, you've got to step into the darkness. You've got to have an event where the ticket price has got to be high enough where it's going to knock out the lower spenders. And you got to have, honestly, you have to trust in it, trust the process. So you set that ticket price to make people get to it, and that's how you're going to attract them. The other thing too is this: is affluent people like to be with affluent people. They like to hang out and network, like as Amy's saying, and network with people who are like them, doctors, lawyers, and things. That ticket price, oftentimes, that will be an attractant to your event. They'll see that the ticket price is 80, 100, 150 or something like that, and they're going to want to come just solely based on that. So wrapping the ticket price into the mission is also good guidance for who you're getting in the room. So absolutely, I agree with that. And, I wish I could have my clients, I always get them to a point, and then, and we're teaching them, and then it goes by itself. And then we're there just as backup support.
I want to stop just a second and just hit some questions. Thank you guys so much. And I want to get a couple of questions that we've had come through here. Let me back up here. I'm going to back up. Michelle, don't worry. We're going to get to your question in a minute, because we are going to talk about some fundraising stuff. So Janice asked a question. She said, with last year being mostly virtual and events, and everyone in, the event lasting about an hour, now that, many will be having in-person events, is there any new norm for timing of an event? Or something like that you guys are seeing or you're doing with the timing? Have you changed anything from, let's say, 2019 into 2021 that you've incorporated since going through last year, or are you just going right back to the same type schedules?
Amy?
Timing wise, we're not changing anything. And I say that because, similar to a virtual event that most people like, 45 minutes to an hour is all you're going to hold their attention. We, over the last probably 5 years, have gotten to where our program piece of the night is an hour or less, and the rest of the evening is networking, mission drive, live auction, cocktail reception. So we're not really changing anything as far as the timing of our event, because we've already had that smaller window of the programming, which tends to be the piece that, if it goes too long, people start leaving the room and they're not spending money or they're not paying attention. What we are doing is we are finding, just because of circumstances, we have less staff at MDA because of furloughs and whatnot. We're in a situation where we're scaling back the event. And when I say scaling back, there are things that we don't have staff in place to get auction items. We used to have staff just dedicated to doing nothing but getting auction items. We don't have that. So we're depending on our committees to get auction items. We have some volunteers. We'll definitely rely more on consignment companies, but that's not a big focus. Silent auction is going to bring in 5 to 10% of your gross income typically. So we're we're switching our focus to more where we get more bang for our buck. Where can we make our money? Well, we all know that, 70% should be your sponsorship, 65 to 70% is sponsorships. Your mission drive, you can do 20, 25% of your gross in mission drive. So we're just focusing more on where we can get more bang for our buck, and it takes less time to earn that money.
But as far as timeline, Amy, you're saying that pretty much you're sticking to what you guys were doing prior to hour of programming and fundraising. The rest of it's party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. George, how about you guys?
We're sticking to the same timeline as when we started. And our events are high speed, low drag. They're high intensity, like a crazy controlled 3-ring circus. And then we do, a program within the range of about a half an hour, because it's stuck into a time right when we close our silent auction, and we can begin the live. So for timing reasons, we haven't changed. And I'll say this, and the one thing that we're experiencing now is because we're one of the premier consignment auction item, not so much charities. Travel packages, but we are putting out an enormous amount of, we're giving helping charities with enormous amount of auction items, for the silent auction, live auction, things like that. But the one thing that I'm really preaching, and it could cut my own throat, but I'm here to help charities, not myself, is having the auction items sponsored. I'm pushing them on that, getting the auction items sponsored and how it benefits them. So, and what that does is, because of staffing has been cut down, furloughs and everything else. And she's right. They don't have time. They don't have time to go out, looking for donated items and all this other stuff. Plus, again, going back to the charities that I work with, the businesses have been pummeled by the COVID, and they can't readily give items as like they used to. They can't. So they're all worried about their electric bill. So that goes back down to consignment items. Get the consignment items sponsored. It's been working, but no, we haven't changed anything.
Okay, so I hope that helped. Basically, I think, Janice, what the consensus here is, I'm just going to kind of sum it up. What I'm hearing from both Amy and George is that they really haven't changed anything from what they were doing in, let's say, 2019. Get your fundraising done, keep that programming in a box. Basically, don't let speakers get out of hand and create a long programming. Raise your money, which I always say, raise your money first, have the party after. And I call it the golden hour of fundraising, which is probably more of 45 minutes. Get that done, get that momentum done, and get it out of the way. So I hope that helps. We've got another question from Janice, and I think this is something we come back to a lot with a lot of organizations. Talking about committees, and both of you are so push so hard on committees, and I'd love to hear this. So she said her organization is, this is from Gabriella. She said they struggle to engage with their committee to reach out to their friends and network, and she said we wind up sending, selling most of the sponsorships internal. I think basically what she's asking, how in the world do I kick my committee in the tail and get them to engage and start producing? So Amy, I'm gonna let you go first.
This whole time, ladies first. I'd like to hear.
Well, Amy's got a ton of experience with committees. Not that you don't, George. That's for sure.
First, I'm going to start off by saying the struggle is real. It is not easy to find the good committee members, and it's a work in progress. A couple of things, to make your committee, you have to hold them accountable. But to start off, when you recruit committee members, I think we tend to put ourselves in a position where we know it's hard to get committee members. So we're a little hesitant on what we tell them when we meet with them. And that's really not helping us. When you meet with a potential committee member, you need to be upfront. You need to say, this is the expectations. I have a job description, I call it, for my committee. And it says very clearly, like, you must raise $10,000, a minimum of $10,000. You must sell a sponsorship to your company. You will open your Rolodex and help us, open the doors for us for bigger partners. You will help us secure large auction items, being very upfront with what the expectation is. And honestly, I have found, because let me back up. We did a few years ago, we did what we called the 6-figure challenge. at MDA, and we picked markets across the country that did not have an event. And the goal was, and we kind of trained them step by step. So they were starting from scratch, and they had to build the committee, and we had kind of a timeline of when everything had to happen before they could move forward to the next step. And the goal was for these markets to raise $100,000 the first year with their event. And of course, the committee was the struggle. But what we found was, if you can really find that one really good committee member that has that good network and works for a company that has a lot of vendors, and I always say, like, you want to go to a company that writes big checks to other companies, because that's who they're going to go after to sell their sponsorship. So once you get that one person, and then you ask them to bring somebody to the table, and then that person brings somebody, it grows from there. So to me, the toughest part is finding that first person, and finding that first person that's right. And that's where we have to ask ourselves, is this the right person? Can this person write a check for $10,000? Can their company write a check for $10,000? Do they know people that can write a check for $10,000? So making sure that it is the right person. And then by all means, like I said, you have that job description, hold them accountable in meetings. I always share a spreadsheet of every committee member and how much money they've raised. Well, we're competitive. Nobody wants to be the guy on the spreadsheet that hasn't sold any sponsorships. Well, Joe Smith has already sold $25,000 worth of sponsorships.
Yeah.
And I like to do, a lot of helping them along the way. We've had other calls on this. I think we have to sometimes almost think for our committee members and have those conversations. Write down a list. Who are the top 10 CEOs that you texted or talked to? Mm-hmm. Who do you know that does, owns XYZ type of company, and think for them. Take them through different exercises to get them thinking and build their target list for them. And then they can go make that ask, whether it's by themselves or with you along for the ride and helping to secure the sponsorship. So, I think, but I feel your pain. I would, if I said, building a committee is easy, I'd be lying. That is definitely one of the toughest parts. But once you get those one or two people, I feel like it just kind of spurs from there.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Amy. George, tell us how to get our committees in gear.
Okay, first off, I've legitimately just experienced this. That came back, and I did a video blog on it, a vlog about it. Getting a commit, absolutely positively, building a team. I love to call them teams because everybody pulls into that. Team building is probably is the most important aspect of all of this, because without a great team, you're not going to have anything. The problem is most of us go out and we ask all of our friends and this and that, ask our friends and our family if they'd be a part of this team. Now, you got to understand, I'm talking from a different perspective, and I'm really liking this where we're at here. Amy comes from the MDA from a very large scale. I'm coming from mom and pop to mid-level. So when we're building that team, you got to look. What you have to do is you have to mine for gold. Look for that rock star. Look for that person who's going to come in and listen. You're going to see a major difference. It's going to be night and day. You're going to see who the rock star is, and the rock star you basically have to recruit and let go, and build your team. Ask the rock star person who is really good people if they know other people like them. Build that team. Just don't ask anybody. Because what's going to happen is you're going to spend more of your time trying to get that committee member or that team member to do something. You're going to work your butt off trying to get them to do something and it's not going to be worth it in the end. Either they're going to be in or going to be out. But recruiting, absolutely, to say what Amy said, recruiting the right people is the most important thing. So
we did a really good webinar on committees that I told Gabriella that we would email her. As a matter of fact, we've got a great recording, and I took some notes from that webinar, and the interplay between Jason and Amy, I can't recall off the top of my head who our guest was. Jason always says something that, and we have this conversation with Amy regularly about access, right? And the phone being the most powerful tool that you have. So I think you're all kind of alluding to that as well. Amy brought this really good point to me for some reason that was very indelible about someone who is a major donor and recruiting large donors to be on your committee. She said that a few weeks ago, and I thought that was really, really impactful. And I was just a little icing on the cake there. I thought that adding something like that or recruiting people that way would be really, really impactful for helping your committee, because those folks are obviously engaged and have a heart for the mission, you know?
Yeah, I've got a couple things that I like to do whenever there's already a committee in place. You know, you've already there, you've got the people there, and there's always one, what I call them, the curmudgeon, that sits over there and doesn't say they don't want to do anything. They've got lots of stuff to tell everybody, and it's just they put up roadblocks. Get them off your committee.
Negativity,
cut negativity. Have a really nice conversation and say, Trevor, thank you so much. I really appreciate you reaching out, but I'm going to ask you to step away because, you know, that I just want to thank you. I'm going to ask you to step off. Step away. I mean, just be real blunt. And everybody's going to go, what happened to Trevor? Well, you know what? He just wasn't really carrying his weight. And then I'm going to pick up the phone and have a conversation. I'm going to say, hey, Amy, I need you to step up here. You know, you came on this committee all guns a-blazing, and I'm asking it's time to pick up your phone and be kind, be considerate, but don't be afraid to ask, because a lot of times they're kind of just sitting back waiting for somebody else to take the lead. And if you don't have that, what I call the bulldozer pit bull on your committee, you have to be that person. So people want to be led. I don't care if if you've got 10 people on your committee that can all write checks for $100,000, they're waiting on you. Do not be afraid to say, Amy, tell me the next 10 people you're going to call this week. You know, George, who's on your list to call this week? And then follow up with them and say, how'd your phone calls go? Or what, you know, your presentation, do I need to get on the call with you? And to George's point, they'll let you work it to death if you ask them. But when you ask people, my experience has been over a long time doing this, they respond in a positive manner. Yeah. But one of the things you got to do is get the person that's sitting there naysaying everything, get them off, get them out of the way. Because all they're going to do is just make everybody else stop talking. And Absolutely. That's what we don't want to do. And the most powerful fundraising tool you have is this phone right here. So thanks for the great questions. Keep them coming, because we've got
I have another question.
Oh, please, yeah.
One of our first questions, Jay. Michelle from Rainbow Village had a question. And what's interesting is I thought it would dovetail very nicely. I'm sorry to backtrack and zig here, but George was talking about it. He's one of the first people I ever heard speak about it. Jason's one of the first people, and we've definitely had this conversation with Amy. So we're all on board with this about having items and different facets of the event sponsored or underwritten. Michelle had a question. Hey, you guys, are there any new ideas other than a fund to need, silent live auction, raffle? I was going to say the golden ticket, because we can set up the tickets, you know, on the online platform. That's pretty cool and pretty new, and you can sell those out before the event, Michelle, and all of our guests. But I really thought that new facet that we're really trying to drive home is having items and different facets of the event sponsored and underwritten. That is a really, really underutilized revenue stream, Michelle, and all of our guests, that we're trying to implore everyone to do. Your committee can help, as a matter of fact, with that, as far on that point. But this is kind of, like I said, we're zigging from the committee thing. But any new feedback, not just about sponsoring or underwriting, if you guys want to embellish about that, great. But any new trends, Amy, George, that you're seeing other than the traditional fund and need, live auction, silent auction, raffles, drawings?
I want to start, Trevor, by just bringing something up, and I think it kind of goes now. Obviously, any other new things that they've got, I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
But just for me personally, before COVID, before everything from last year, I would always say 50-50. I would always say you need to have 50% of your money from sponsorships and underwriting, and 50% the night of the event. Move fast forward, I would always say during COVID, during virtual events, I would say 70. I know Amy has said 80%. And I think George has a lot of this, had, doing that. But going back to live events, see, I'm back to the point. I'm like, if you can raise 70% during that, you can still raise 70% now. And it just creates such more hype, because you can do more things. And which goes back to, how do you have this great event? And I'm going to bring this to fundraising for a second. But you should, one of the things that is really interesting to me is nonprofits. We talk to, because we get to talk to people all over the country, and see all the different viewpoints. Is I'll say, they'll say, well, our high sponsorship is $5,000, and I say, well, what's the most you ask for? Well, $5,000. Well, why didn't you ask for 10? Well, I don't know. We've never asked for that before.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I think there's, especially right now, people are giving the events that, I know they've been having tremendous success with their live events. I know George has been having tremendous success with his live events.
Yeah.
All the live events we're being a part of are just rocking it's just setting records. Don't be afraid to ask for money before. Raise your level. Ask, sponsor, underwrite everything. Y'all have heard me say this. We've had people do the bathrooms. They called it the refreshing station and sold it for $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
We're seeing golden tickets being sponsored for $4,000 and $5,000.
Everything can be sponsored.
Everything can be underwritten and sponsored. Do not back off that. So I want to just say, if you want to raise, $200,000 or $300,000, try to go get $250,000 before the event even starts. And then, man, when you get to the event, that's when you start, hitting the home runs out of the park. So that's just where I wanted to
Amy, speak to anything creative, speak to any experience you have with underwriting and sponsorship. And Michelle had a question that I want you to as well, George, of course. But Michelle had a follow-up question. Just, is there any difference between sponsorship and underwriting? Will you speak to that, Amy?
There's really not. The difference for me, and everybody probably looks at this different, is for me, as sponsorship, there are different levels and you get XYZ benefits, and they're somewhat generic. They're the gold sponsor, the platinum sponsor, whatever you want to call them. Whereas the underwriting opportunities are very specific. So it could be a silent auction sponsor. You're underwriting the cost of you want to build that sponsorship so that it covers the cost. So for example, if you have a cocktail reception sponsor, if your cocktail reception is going to cost you $10,000, so you have to write that underwriting opportunity so it covers that $10,000. Plus, if you're giving tickets to those people or a table or whatever it is, and build the sponsorship that way. So it's just really making sure that with the underwriting, it's covering some aspect of your event. But essentially they're the same. They're going to have benefits with them. You just, the underwriting, you have to just make sure that you charge. I see people undercharging for underwriting opportunities, and you have to build it. What are they underwriting? What is that cost of that? At a golf outing, you're underwriting you're the shirt sponsor, and people are selling it for $5,000. Well, you can't buy shirts for $5,000 for all your golfers. So really the underwriting to me is where you have an aspect of it that you need to build in and cover, versus a regular sponsorship where you're giving them, a logo here and things that essentially don't really cost you anything. The underwriting, there is a cost. So you have to make sure it's figured in correctly.
George, we're gonna bring the same question to you, because I know that you have something really specific about, to talk about this, because one of the aspects that I think happens, and I tend to probably underdo this as much, but tell me about sponsorships and underwriting and selling those sponsorships and underwriting that you really push with your clients.
Well, listen, I'll be quite honest with you. A few years ago, I all of a sudden started thinking about underwriting our auction items, right? And I'd like to answer Michelle's question. She asked, is there any tax benefit to somebody who underwrites? Yes, it's 100% tax deductible. The reason why, it's a direct donation to the charity. They're really not paying the cost of the item. They're making a donation that then covers the cost to the charity, because then if somebody comes in and they bid on it, the costs are covered. So it's 100% of a donation directly to the charity. So this is what I see. Because let's just say, like, we just came back from that one in Idaho. Literally just came back. Out there, we had a Peyton Manning autographed, custom frame autographed jersey, like this Tom Brady and this Randy Moss. By the way, I picked these because I thought it'd be a cool background. So, the Peyton Manning jersey was underwritten, sponsored, whatever, for $1,000. Well, I sold it at auction for $3,000. Well, because it was sponsored by a client, by a charity, by a business, the charity kept 100%. They made $3,000. I had these Pat Tillman jerseys, if you don't know who Pat Tillman is. And we sold 3 of them for $1,000. They were sponsored. It's just that's the trend. That is the trend, not the timeline. That is the trend that I am seeing big time, especially because that's what I'm talking to my clients about, getting the auction item sponsored. But the one thing I think you're asking is getting everything sponsored. You can get everything sponsored, get the auction item sponsored. You got to have a lot of drive and the right team, which backs us back to that. Going after people who can do it, right? Who will do it. It also offers a much smaller availability for a sponsorship. So if you have an item that's a $250 item, you're not asking for $5,000, $2,500, $1,000. But imagine all the businesses out there who can do $250 or $50 or a piece of jewelry. That's what I'm seeing.
And that's where I was going. That's specifically where I was going. Is there are people out there that want to be in front, want to have access to the clients, to be in front of your donor base, the people that are going to attend your event, that don't have $5,000 to underwrite something.
It's all about, you have to understand, there's a lot of people that don't have that kind of money. But a client of ours had $48,000 worth of our stuff sponsored. And it all sold. $48,000. And that was all auction items, not charity travel pack, not packages. That was all auction items. So but I like to add into this because I think the question is a little bit more diverse than that. I think that she's asking, is there any other method? To be quite honest with you, it's what works. Live auction, silent auction, raffles. I'm very big into raffles with donated items, and a fund to need or a paddle raise, whatever you want to call it. That's what works. That's what works. What I do.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What I do see is, and I like to call it shotgun pattern fundraising, is people try to do something else that doesn't really work. They shoot for the center, but they're shooting for the center to make a lot more money using some other thing that really isn't tried and true and tested. And what happens is, like they're hitting with a shotgun pellets. It hits everywhere else but the middle. So do what works, but definitely concentrate yourself on getting sponsors.
Okay, I want to change gears for just a second. I mean, if you want to say something, please go ahead. Then I want to.
We have 2 questions.
We'll come back to those in a second, Trevor, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to get to a couple of things, but I want to let Amy just talk about underwriting sponsor real quick, and then I want to bring up another point.
I was just going to tag on to just 2 things. One, just remember, if you are going to do raffles, check with your state raffle laws. They've gotten very strict in some of the states, and you do have to apply for a raffle license. And if you get caught and don't have that raffle license, you can lose your nonprofit charter. So make sure you are checking into the raffle laws for your state. And then the other thing I was going to say is, I think asking about other fundraising opportunities. There's tons of revenue enhancer games. I know Trevor and Jason, have done webinars on that. And I'm sure they'd be happy to share. There are lots of different fun revenue enhancers, and they are a great aspect to an event, outside of the, whether it's a wine pull or a golden ticket or a, tree of hope, whatever it may be. But I think one thing we learned last year with COVID is we really don't need all of those things. They're fun. But people will pay for your mission, essentially. They'll buy your mission. They don't necessarily need, because we learned that through virtual. They don't necessarily need to have a whole bunch of games or whatever it is. Like I said, it's a fun element. But as far as the fundraising side of it, going back to what George said, your mission drive, raise your paddle mission drive, whatever you call it, your sponsorships, that's what works.
I want to move on to another thing, and this kind of ties into something about, underwriting. I think one of the things that I think is just insane. Okay, I'm going to say it. I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but actually I hope it makes you start thinking about it. Is when I go to an event that they're trying to really push it up, pump it up, hype it up, and it's a cash bar. I think that is one of the craziest ideas that anybody could ever have. And I'm talking about a formal type, dress up gala, because, we wanted to save some money. I'd love to get y'all's take on that.
Amy?
I call cash bars tacky. I think when you have people, and it goes back to you need to know what your cost per person is so that you're charging the right amount so that you're covering whatever that cost that alcohol is. Because it's hard to differentiate if you're, how do you have your presenting sponsor that maybe paid $25,000 or $15,000? You're going to ask their guests to then come and pay for alcohol. I'm not a fan. I think that's not where you should cut your costs, number one. And number two, I mean, essentially we want people to have a few cocktails, because the more cocktail, not the more, there's a too much, but we like them to have a couple of cocktails because they spend more money.
It's part of the social aspect.
It is. And if you're going to sell it as a networking event that everybody wants to come to and stuff, I mean, that's what people want to do. They want to stand around with their glass of wine and they want to talk business, talk shop, talk whatever. They don't want to be going and digging in their wallet and buying their cocktails.
George?
Have a completely different view. And here's why. I just left that one in Idaho, had 180 people. We raised 211,000 net. It had a couple drink tickets and a cash bar. I've got a major event in Vegas with well over 1,000 people, a couple drink tickets and a cash bar. What it has to do with, it all has to do with the viability and what your people can afford. If you want to have a bar, it's up to you. Another thing too is I deal with charities who do not want to readily, in fact, I'm talking to one now that doesn't want to readily just give alcohol to clients. They don't. They're a faith-based organization. And I said, well, you can have a cash bar. But what I find true is, yes, it's great. It's great. If you're having a great big high-end event and you're charging $3,000 a table, fantastic, do it. But sometimes, and listen, I'm all for beer, wine, and sodas at the very least. But sometimes it comes down to what the client can afford. 80% of the charities in the United States are not ones who can afford to have big things. So it all comes down to viability and the people you're going to have at your event. Yes. Does alcohol help? Yes. However, it doesn't guarantee things. And another thing, I'm dealing with a lot of law enforcement charities. A lot of law enforcement charities are worried about if they're giving alcohol to clients, what's going to come out if somebody gets arrested for DWI in the background. So I readily do not agree with that. I think it's event to event.
See, I think that if you have some tickets and have something there, that's great. That's part of what the deal is. You don't have to have a drunk fest where, it's just, it's with bottomless bottles. No. But I personally, if you can't do it, I would rather just have beer and wine and have it where they can go up and get beer and wine than having a cash bar. I think it slows it down. I think it slows stuff down. I think it drags out because people would rather. Where'd you go, George? Because there he's back. Because I'm doing this on my phone and people keep calling me. Because I think no worries. So I think I'm going to say this 15 times and forget what I was going to say. You get up there, one of the things that makes me crazy about the cash bar is standing in line. Now, it is a networking part. Yeah, you can stand in line and there's some, while we're hanging out visiting. But whenever you've got a line around the block and everybody's trying to get there, it's kind of like not having enough people there to serve. And that's
exactly what it comes down to. If there's a line, there's not enough people there to serve.
So I think a happy medium. But then the flip side of that is go get it underwritten. Go find somebody that has the capacity to underwrite it and say, hey, look, we're trying to make this a really awesome event. We want to make sure that nobody has to stand in the long line and pull out their credit card and pull out cash and do all this stuff. We just want to make it where it's a really great event. Would you be willing to step up and do this? Because I know you're a friend.
I want to add this for you.
Go with it.
Okay. Here's something else I've seen, right? Yeah, people standing in line are not bidding. That's very true. But it has nothing to do with being a cash bar. It's the capacity to serve. Mark said that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's the other thing. The last thing you don't want is somebody bidding and buying something because they were lit, they were drunk or whatever else, and waking up the next day and having buyer's remorse and backing off their bid, not paying or whatever else, saying, oh God, I can't believe I did that. I can't afford that. They did it. Now, listen, this happens to me all the time. Oh my God, I bid on this trip to Tuscany with great bottles of wine, and I was only doing it because I was trying to impress so-and-so, but I really don't have that money. This happened to a celebrity. I had a major celebrity back off of a bid because he didn't have that kind of money. Because he was trying to act the part. So what I'm saying is alcohol is great. That's great. But people will still, if they're engaged in your event and they're engaged in your mission, they're gonna make a donation whether they're drunk or not, or they're feeling good or not. Having alcohol available, yes. I think it goes back to event. It all depends.
See, that's why I love having this differing views, because somebody out here is sitting here going, well, yeah, I'm right with Amy. I think this is tacky and I don't like that. But somebody else is sitting there going, well, we've been having 1,000 people event and doing this. So that's why we love doing this with these great, having people like this. We're out of time. I'm gonna,
quick questions.
Well, I've got 2 quick questions. Go ahead and
two
get them
quick questions
while we're doing that.
Hey, speak to this, you two, please, if you don't mind. Darlene, sweetheart, she's been very patient. And then Sherilyn and Becky had another question. This underwriting topic this is a hot topic. We might have to do this again, of course. Would just quickly, in 30 seconds or less, George, Amy, would you give an underwriter a table? And then I have a follow-up question.
Amy.
I would absolutely, because I then want them at the event. I just would make sure when I built that underwriting opportunity, it covered the cost of the table and the underwriting piece of it.
Beautiful. George?
It all depends on what they're underwriting.
Okay, great.
You don't want to give them a table if they're underwriting something for $250.
That's a great point. I understand there has to be some buy-in. And then the follow-up, Sherilyn and Becky kind of asked the same question. So I really, really appreciate it because it's a great question. Can you ask folks to underwrite donated items?
Well, an item doesn't need to be underwritten if it's donated.
Depends on the item.
Well, like a consignment item?
Sure, could be a donate.
Or like donated, like we have somebody underwrite our silent auction. They're the silent auction sponsor. They get their logo and whatever, decorations and stuff, signage at the silent auction, but all of our auction items are donated. Our committees get them donated. So we do it.
Okay. Gotcha.
I want to hit Margaret's question really quick. She said, how do donors feel about writing a check to a vendor and not the nonprofit when underwriting? Yeah. I've never seen that. Everybody I know, you write the check to the nonprofit.
To the charity, to the nonprofit.
Right, to the charity, yeah. And the charity pays the expense.
Yeah.
Because the item isn't, the item is consigned. So if it doesn't sell, it comes back, and then the charity still keeps the money for the underwriting.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's beautiful about this. This is a whole nother deal. So, hey, we promise everybody, we always get you out of here in a year.
An hour.
Or an hour, I'm saying a year. Golly,
that was a ton.
But we do have we have a winner, Rochelle Chang. Everybody, she just won. Give her a big hand.
Rochelle.
Hey, Rochelle.
Thank you so much for being here. As every week, thank you so much, Amy Myers. George, thank you so much. I'm going to send out an email. We're going to have this transcribed and send this out, but I'm going to send the recording out. That way you guys can re-listen, share it. And it'll also have Amy and George's emails on there. So if you want to ask them a question directly, you can. They're very lovely doing it. Obviously, you can send it to Trevor, myself. We want to help you. By all means, please keep the questions coming. We hope to see you here next week. We are going to be here next week. And have a very, very safe and wonderful 4th of July weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, George. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jay. Talk to you all again. Tell a friend about next Thursday. Tell a friend. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.